Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and today we're going to be talking about a powerful topic, especially for those who maybe struggle with indecision or you desire to act and live more intentionally. Then you're going to love this conversation today. Kim DeYoung is joining me. She is passionate about supporting others to raise their level of consciousness about the choices they make. She's a choice coach, facilitator, and author of The Book of Choice, which I was passionate about sharing in Aspire Magazine's top 10 inspiring books list. Drawing on years of experience and research, Kim unveils a fresh approach to decision making that will transform your way of thinking. In her book, she shares her comprehensive guide and her choice mapping process to equip readers with practical strategies to navigate life's complexities, empowering them to make choices that align with their values and their aspirations. Her deepest desire, as you're going to discover, and passion is supporting others to have meaningful conversations about their choices. You can visit her at kimdeyoung.com. And welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Well, when I first came, we've been connected for a while, but when I first connected with you about your book, I'm like, ooh, I talk to so many people. They're always sitting on the fence about something in their life, right? Whether it's a relationship, business, anything, and they get stuck in that place of I guess you can say indecision, but there's no momentum, there's no movement because they can't make a choice. So I was like, I got to get Kim on the show. So let's talk about that because you say there are different types of decision makers, right? And how our choices do shape our lives. So why don't we start with what led you to this work in this path?
Thank you for asking that. It began now around 2014 when I had a circumstance that caused me to look back at a particular choice that I was made, and I was looking at that choice through the lens of what came from this particular choice, like what showed up in my life, opportunities, people, experiences, etc. And to capture what I believed was a lot, I took a particular choice that I had made a year prior, and I used a mind mapping software that allowed me to keep track of all that I believed that had come into my life in a 2-year window. And in looking at what I had created, I was kind of amazed to look back from the vantage point of, oh my God, had I not made that choice, everything that was on this piece of paper would not be in my life in the moment. But then I had a different vantage point, which was what was the new choice that I could make today and what potentially might come in to my life. So it was with that very first map that I shared it with one friend who said, would I do one for her? And that then sent me on a journey in the year of 2014 where I ended up exploring the choices of 29 people, in addition to going back through my entire life and looking at the gamut of choices I had made and was making. And what was fascinating was that at the end of that year, I had a very unusual vantage point about choice. And it was never anything I set out to do, but I felt like, wow, I am sitting on something really special because choice touches everybody. Nobody is immune to making them. And I was really in a beautiful space to hear the stories and the issues that people felt about the choices they made.
Don't you love when our own life path leads us to our life purpose, and we're able to just really support others. It always lights me up when I hear a woman's journey to the work that she's doing in the world. And you're so right. A choice is a part of every life, right? Every moment, actually.
And when you just stated something that I've never put in words as succinctly as you just did, that my life's path led to my life's purpose. I mean, that's it couldn't be said more perfectly, and I feel unbelievably blessed for that to have happened because now every conversation I get to have, whether it's with a young adult, someone in transition, someone elderly, about their choices, they're always rich and interesting and like people uncover things that they never thought about with regard to their choices when we get into deep conversation. And that's incredibly satisfying for me, helpful for them. It's just a beautiful experience.
Well, it's so funny. It's a question I often ask to my guests because I've always been enthralled with women's journeys. And I know from my own experience, similar to yours, is my whole life led me to the work I'm doing now. And so many years ago, I'd look back at my life and go, I wish this didn't happen. I wish that didn't happen. I wish I made a different choice, right? And now I see, oh, Len, you had to have all those experiences in order to lead, love, and serve from the place of who I am now. Do you look at your life that way too?
100%. I'm very aware from the perspective of just the importance of intentionality with regard to our choices. It's like, here you are saying that all of this happened because of choices you made. Now, the truth is, if you were not to have taken action on certain things back in the day, you might not have created what you did. So it's kind of a two-part thing. Like, yes, there was the crossroads of the choice, but you also took action and thus momentum and a lot more continued. So I'm a real believer that it's one thing to have the choice, to have the idea, and then it's a very other thing to begin to take action and create movement and momentum from it. That's really the key. And that's when you start to see the power of the choice that you've made.
I love that there are no accidents. I just got off with a coaching client. And we were talking about um, exactly what you just said, that without inspired action, right? For me, everything like comes from this place of deep inspiration from within. But without that, we can't create momentum towards the direction we want to go. We can mull over every choice in front of us. That doesn't create the transformation. It's the action that leads us to the transformation. So I love how you encapsulated it. That was beautiful because it's so true. We have to act. And I've always said this, I would rather get off the fence of indecision and move towards something. And even if it wasn't the something for me, at least I took action and then I can kind of reevaluate and go, is this the direction I want to go? If not, it'll fork off again and I'll make a new choice. But at least I got off the fence.
Okay, you just nailed like a key point that I love to discuss, which is the difference between a choice and a goal. So when you're really making a choice, it's just that. It's a springboard to take action to begin moving. Like if you've made a choice to go in a direction and it doesn't feel good, you're absolutely right. You make a new choice, you course correct, you can adjust. Versus the concept of the goal is something that's very out in the distance, like you're moving towards something. And they both have a purpose. But the choice is something that gets you moving toward where you want to go. And, I have three kids now and they're young adults in their 20s. And, I'm often speaking with them about, and this comes up in many conversations with young adults, like they don't know where they're heading and they're scared to move because what if where they're moving isn't the right thing? And it's like, all you can really do is make the best choice you can in the moment and begin to take that action. And then if you're not happy with where you are, you adjust. I mean, it's in some way, it is actually as simple as that.
It really is. It's, kind of like a GPS. It's going to tell you where to go, but sometimes you want to take a shortcut to go get a Dunkin' Donuts coffee or something. And then it recalibrates you to get you back on the path. It's kind
Yeah.
of that's how I feel like I just wanna I get the energy moving. So I love this because, it's something you said earlier is we are all making choices in every moment. What I try to guide my clients are they conscious choices or unconscious choices based on old paradigms, habits, etc. Do you find that too?
Well, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, my whole focus is the focus on the choices that we make with intentionality. So certainly that. But are there, like I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday and we were talking about essentially the choice she made by not making a choice. And I said, you know what? The truth is, not choosing is a choice. And how do we step out of that? So I'm always going to be a believer in doing what feels right for you, bringing a level of intentionality to the choice you're making. And a lot of it starts with like, why are you making this choice? Why does this choice even matter to you? So to have that clarity, that allows you to then bring the intentionality into moving forward with it.
I love that because everything I live and teach and all my brands are about intentional life, intentional business, right? Because I've lived the other way. So, and I know what it feels like. But when you do everything with intention, there's just, my words are, it creates magic. It creates this um, energy within myself to know I'm aligned with the truth of who I am instead of what maybe I should be or should do based on other people's expectations. So I am loving this conversation. We're going to take a quick break and we come back. Kim, I want to talk about your book, The Book of Choice, what readers can expect from it. And we want to talk also about your choice mapping process. So, my friends, we will be back in a moment. Stay with us, and I invite you to visit Kim at kimdeyoung.com. And listen, while you're there, be sure to take her quiz called What Type of Decision Maker Are You? We'll be back in a moment.
Are you ready to make the second half of your life the best half of your life, my midlife friend? Living a life full of happiness, abundance, and success is possible when you learn strategies to soothe your inner critic, honor your inner wisdom, and that support you to co-create your life from a place of joy and possibility. Don't walk the journey alone. Midlife Transformation Guide, Master Certified Law of Attraction Coach, and Certified Desire Factor Coach, Karen Shire, will passionately support you to uncover and release what no longer lights you up, so you can go from feeling stuck, stressed, and unfulfilled to feeling free, empowered, and eager for the next chapter of your life. Learn more at KarenShireCoaching.com and schedule a complimentary discovery call today.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. Today, we're talking about gaining clarity in decision making using the choice mapping process. And Kim DeYoung is here with me today. So, Kim, hearing your own personal journey and how the choice mapping process was birthed through that own journey, tell us a little bit about your book, The Book of Choice, and what they can expect to learn from it, and any insights you had while writing it.
Yeah, you know, what's so interesting in that I never imagined writing a book. And I certainly never had the vision for what the book of choice would ultimately be, considering that I began working on it in 2014 and I published it in 2023. It was a long journey, and it was a journey of many stops and starts. And the reason being was that initially, when I mentioned to you that I had begun having these conversations with 29 people, I was now creating these very in-depth maps for them as a way for them to see their choice in a new light. But never, ever, ever did I have a vision that I would share the mapping process with anyone. I thought that what I was sharing in my book were the concepts of how one makes choices, all the things that I had learned about past, present, and future choices, the distinctions between the personal choices we make, the professional choices, the relationship choices. I was looking back at the stories that people hold with themselves with regard to choices they've made in the past, potentially the shame they feel because of that. There were so many elements that I was dealing with, and I was never imagining teaching the mapping process. And it wasn't until probably 5 years into the writing process that one of my editors said to me, Kim, I think people might be interested in your mapping, which then caused me to say, how do I do what I do? So I had to spend a bit of time watching myself. How did I map so that I could now teach others to do it? And at first, it was quite complex. And I had another coach come into the mix at one point who said, Kim, if you're going to teach your mapping process, you must make it accessible to everybody. You must make it feel, and I don't know if this was her word or one that I internalized, but almost like Legos, like building blocks, that as somebody entered the journey of learning about the mapping process, I would make it very accessible to them, making them feel like, oh, this is something I can do. And then I build and I build and I build on that process that they can now expand upon. So at the simplest root, what choice mapping is, and I do teach it quite in depth throughout the book. And the beauty is that not only am I teaching a process, but I'm supporting it with so many examples from real life people that are very relatable. But at the root, choice mapping is a self discovery tool. It is a visual way for you to track the details of what you're thinking about a choice so that you can understand yourself better, so that you can make the choice that's right for you. And it can be used to look at choices you have made, to understand who you were when you made choices. It can be used for a current time, who you are at the moment, what you're navigating about a choice. And really, within the book of choice, it teaches the entire process for somebody to really understand. And it's really, mapping becomes a complementary process to journaling. So if you are someone who in the past or still currently has enjoyed journaling and the fluidity of journaling, mapping is quite different. It's about really capturing the essence of what you're going through with regard to your choice in smaller bite-sized nuggets. And because those nuggets are shorter sentences, the words really need to matter. And as the words matter, you're really capturing your truth for what matters regarding your choice. So it's incredibly powerful. And another thing I'll just share with it, and I just encountered this with a client recently. We had done a pretty extensive map for her about a choice that she had wanted to make. And then she came to me probably 2 months later, and things had shifted. And she was now moving away from that choice. And I was able to say to her, let's go back to the original map. We captured a lot of your truth. Does that still feel resonant for you right now? If so, let's address that. So maybe you do stay on track. Maybe you're not moving forth with that choice today. Maybe it's in a year. Or if in fact, maybe if it doesn't feel resonant to you at the moment, that's fine too. Now at least you have a benchmark from which to make adjustments. And it's just incredibly powerful because it captures your truth for where you are in a moment that you can always use as a reference point.
I love this, and I'm a journaler, but I'm a visual journaler. So I love lines, circles. So this process is a visual process, right? It's like the old mind mapping with the lines and circles. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And it can be done on a computer. It can be done in a notebook with pen and paper and
Yeah, and
lovely markers.
I love doing my little hearts, and this path leads here. So my question is any technology, special technology, or how you teach it can be done as you just shared on paper with a computer?
It's incredibly accessible. I happen to use a mind mapping software just because it's easy. It's easy for me to save my maps on my computer, to organize them by client or type. But I have many clients who are studying who prefer handwriting. and they will have a journal and their, and their markers, and that's how they do it. It's really the way that you map is less important than the fact that you map. It's really a process of capturing your words and whatever way works for you. I teach my process, but the beauty of what mapping is it really is an art. And it's for you to take the recipe that I give you and then to make it your own.
I love that. I love how you just described that. So I want to go backwards a little bit because I know the work you're doing now, but when you got on this path, what was the initial inspiration to become a coach?
Well, interestingly, so I became a coach back in the late 90s. And I had come out of a retail background, which I loved, but I had actually been let go from a big job when I was pregnant with my first child, and we had just bought the house that required two incomes. So it was a scary time. And yet I made the choice in that moment that I was going to go the entrepreneurial path versus going back to the corporate job. But it was at that time, as I was getting coached about where I was in the world, that a coach said to me that they saw me as a coach, that was, kind of the essence of who I was, which interestingly, once I began to share that with all of my friends, none of them were surprised because I'd always had that kind of coaching sensibility. So since 1999, 2000, I have been coaching, and the the person that I have coached has changed a bit over the years. Um, but the truth is, at the heart of it, I am someone who's always loved digging in and asking questions. That's probably, my sweet spot. And so now to have created choice mapping and now to specifically coach people of all ages around the choices that they're making, now I've got a process that kind of works along with the coaching that I've been doing.
Oh, yeah, I think it's just a powerful tool that you've created. And what I love about it is because I kind of do it, I just doodle in my journal. It's when we see the possibilities. Do you notice that too? Like sometimes we're so in our head that we make stories about our choices, but what I'm feeling is when you put it down on paper or on a computer and you start to map out, as you just beautifully shared, the choice in front of us, it almost shifts the energy into a possibility thinking instead of limited thinking.
Well, you're bringing up something very key. So, in one of the main map that I teach people about is something called an exploration map, which is an opportunity to look at a past, present, or future choice with the depth of a lot of inquiry. And two of the key questions in that map are, here's this choice I want to make. So, one question is, what could hold me back from that choice? The limiting beliefs, the fears, the stuff, the noise, the obstacles. But then the other key question is, what becomes possible as I step into this choice? And those two questions together, it's almost like a tug of war. The question about what could hold you back is really kind of keeping you in the past, versus this question about what is possible is pulling you forth into the future. And once I find that people have really captured a lot of the stuff that could hold them back from stepping into this choice that matters to them, they're able to look at those specific fears or beliefs with adult eyes to say, wait a minute, here's this choice that really matters. Am I going to let this particular belief get in my way, or this particular fear? Now, in some cases, the fear or the belief might be a really big one that has a pull for you or a charge, and one that you need to address. Other times, and I've seen this happen numerous times, is once somebody has kind of captured the fears or the beliefs that they think could hold them back, they're able, again, with an adult perspective, to say, that's not going to get in my way. Like, this is such an important choice. And I see all that's possible. And I've captured all these exciting ideas of what could be, who I could be, how I may serve others with this choice, whatever it may be. And so the possibility can often pull you forth from the fears that could have gotten in your way.
Ladies, are you listening to this? I love this because I'm all about possibilities. And one of the questions that came up is, I love what you said about a lot of times the fear is holding us back in the past. It's stopping us from living our dreams, whatever that dream may be for each of us, right? And for so many people, I think that fear is what keeps them on the fence from making a choice, before they've heard about your amazing tool I'm talking about. So it's fear that keeps them on the fence. Is that what you notice
No
is
doubt. I mean, fear is one thing that keeps people on the fence. I think another thing that keeps people on the fence is a self-imposed label of the type of decision maker they are. So I hear many, many people just say, kind of almost without thinking, "Oh, I'm not really good at decisions. I'm very indecisive. I'm avoidant." These are very common ways that people describe themselves. So regardless of if they have the fear or not, they've kind of put themselves in a box of being someone who doesn't make decisions easily. So because they think it, then they can't. It kind of goes
mm,
in hand.
I want to go deeper into this, the decision making styles, because I think that's um, so enticing to discover what kind of decision maker we are. So we're going to take a quick break, ladies. Stay with us. You're listening to Inspired Conversations with Kim DeYoung. You can learn more at kimdeyoung.com and take that quiz while you're there. What type of decision maker are you? We'll be right back.
It only takes one person to transform a relationship, any relationship. Relationship expert and Aspire magazine columnist Stacy Martino and her husband Paul are the founders of relationshipdevelopment.org and the Hay House authors of The Missing Piece, a proven method to single-handedly transform your relationship and create harmony in your home. At a time when divorce rates are sky high and families are unnecessarily suffering, The Missing Piece provides powerful solutions to help you navigate real-life situations harmoniously, regardless of what you're currently facing. The Martinos have successfully empowered thousands of students over 14 years with proven tools and strategies that work to transform their relationship, any relationship, without their partner's participation. Transforming your relationship is possible and begins with you. Start now by ordering your copy of The Missing Piece at missingpiecebook.com.
Thanks for circling up with me and my special guest, Kim DeYoung. I am so excited to hear about this. So you have a quiz on your site called "What Type of Decision Maker Are You?" And in the last segment, you were starting to touch on that, and I'm like, ooh, when you said that, I can name two people who fall into that one, the avoidant one. And truth be told, that was me for the first 30 years of my life. So guide us through that, like what you've discovered, and as you were writing this book and doing this work, um, is this how you came up with those types of the decision makers? You kind of started noticing patterns?
Very much so. So I wrote the book and then I created the quiz because it was after essentially a decade of having, now hundreds of choices, hundreds of conversations with people about their choices. I had really an intimate vantage point into how people see themselves as decision makers. And I realized if I could craft a quiz that would give people an insight into the type of decision maker they are, and therefore the strengths that come with that decision making style, as well as the opportunities for growth, I thought that would be helpful. And what's been fascinating, so the quiz has been live probably close to 18 months at this point, and I crafted 5 different types that I saw people in. And it's been very interesting watching the results come in to see kind of where the bulk of the people lie. And at the simplest, I almost say there are 2 camps of people. There are those who have a decision to make, and maybe they've got an internal process where they process quickly or something, but kind of once they know, they move. They're that person. And then there's really almost everybody else who is that other person who really they have a decision to make and they're going to deliberate in some form. They're going to take in information, they're going to think about it, all of the above. But then the distinction between those who deliberate falls into some different categories. There's the person who deliberates, but then once they've got their information, they move forward quickly. They don't waver. They've got what they needed, they move forward. Then there are those who gather the information and they stick their head in the sand. They become avoidant. There are those who are scared to make a mistake, so they don't make the decision. There are some who feel they need the support of a group to make their decision. So there are kind of subtleties around those people who deliberate, but I would say that that's the biggest component in general, is that most people need time to deliberate. And it's a really interesting tool to understand, whether it be within your own family, to understand, like, your family of origin or your current families, the way that they make decisions. It can be very fascinating with a corporate team, because you may find, maybe as the leader, you're the quick one, you're the rhino, you gather the information, you move forth. And there could be others on your team who spend more time thinking. They want more data, they want more stuff. There are some who kind of are guided more intuitively for their decisions. So it's really just understanding yourself, and more importantly, understanding what holds you up from making the decisions you want to make. Because there's a statistic that we make 35,000 choices in a day. And those are everything from, am I turning left, right, eating this or that, putting on this shirt or that shirt? Those are kind of the daily ones. But if any choices are to get in our way, like we've all had that experience, standing in front of the refrigerator or standing in front of our closet, not being able to decide, again, those can seem like small decisions, but if you don't make them, you kind of can't move on to the bigger ones. So it becomes this opportunity for you, if you want to move forward with your life, to how are you moving through the decisions that you need to make on a pretty quick basis.
This is so juicy, and I want to say the URL again, kimdeyoung.com. So I have a question for you. Can your decision-making type evolve over time? Because as you were speaking, in my younger years, meaning, up to probably mid-30s, I had wicked anxiety, depression, so there was a lot of that fear-based energy within me. So of course, I look back now and go, I was the avoider, right? I would avoid things instead of making the choice. But then as got on the path of personal and spiritual development, I became what you call in the two camps, they just know. So now, as long as I know and receive that guidance, it's an intuitive yes for me. And my decision making is all like that now. So do you I guess the question is, that's a normal evolution that our type can change based on our own inner
I
transformation?
would 100% say yes to that. But to that point, your change was again a conscious change. Like, you
Yes.
realized that you were avoidant and you have been on your own spiritual growth path. And you are also someone who has grown to trust your intuition. So that becomes a really viable source. I mean, that takes time also. I mean, to speak to a 20-year-old about trusting their intuition, of course, there are some that may, but that's often a skill that's developed as we
Mm,
age and as we get more comfortable and we've had more experience with it. So I definitely think one's decision making style can evolve. I also think that sometimes people have artificially put themselves in a box to say, oh, I am avoidant, oh, I am indecisive. And it becomes a label that it's almost like, are you really, or have you just labeled yourself as that? And there becomes an opportunity to really question yourself. Like, so you do have a decision, and it'd be very quick to say, oh yeah, I'm indecisive. I don't make decisions well. But what if you had a shift? What if you shifted those words to say, I am in the process of making decisions more easily, something like that. And now that supports you to evolve a bit.
well, I love that because I have two young family members in my extended family around the 24-year mark. And when you were just speaking, I'm like, oh my God, that's what he says all the time. I can't make a decision. What do you want from this restaurant? Oh, I can't make a decision. You pick. What restaurant do you want to go to? I can't make a decision. It drives me crazy. And so his own self language is defining his decision making process.
And he's a perfect example. I mean, we all know that person. I think back to a very funny example of being in a diner with my sister years ago, and to get a diner menu, that's 10 pages long with every option, and she looked at it, she's like, I'll have page two. Like, she didn't even know where to go with the menu. It was so overwhelming. But to take the example that you're sharing of this young adult, it could be as simple as them committing, even just for their own sake, of like, I'm no longer going to say that I am indecisive. And maybe it starts with the small choices of, what, when it comes to, am I eating a hamburger or chicken? I'm just going to make the choice quickly. Or am I going to restaurant A or B? I'm just going to make the decision quickly. Like, these are not life or death decisions. And it can be the opportunity to flex a muscle, to really just begin experimenting on the choices that don't matter so much, so that you can kind of build trust in yourself that you can make choices. And that will then ideally spill over into making more meaningful choices.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a conversation with him the next time a loving conversation, just to help him shift that because it's already become such a pattern at this point in his life. Because I love him, I wouldn't want him to continue that way without at least showing him option and giving him your book. Right. So,
But
we're gonna take a
your
go ahead,
point is
honey.
so valid about the evolution of, like, of course he can evolve. Of course he can grow and change from the decision maker that he is. He just has to want to.
Yeah, and I think that's the big part. And of course, he's still maturing. So, I know he can do this as well as my other family member. So we're gonna take our final break. And when we come back, I want to ask you what kind of advice you would give to someone like him who is struggling to make maybe a difficult choice in their life. And we'll be back in a moment, my friends. I invite you to grab Kim's book, The Book of Choice. You can do so at kimdeyoung.com as well as all book sale websites. And we'll be right back.
Mission driven business owners, are you feeling energetically drained? It's time to shift that so you can lead at your highest level. Lee Murphy Wolfe, creator of the Calibrate Method, has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs create sustainable success. She teaches her clients how to unwind the energetic patterns that affect their flow, tap into their feminine leader energy, and build energetic resilience so they are aligned for the next level of business growth. Lee's unique programs combine the healing frequencies of tuning forks, energy management techniques, and simple business design principles to help you reduce overwhelm, restore vitality, and realign with more ease. Lee offers free energy clearings and tunings twice a week in her free Facebook community, The Balanced Business. Learn more about Lee and her services at leemurphywolfe.com.
Hey, thanks for circling up with us today. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm Linda Joy, and with me today is Kim DeYoung. And we've been diving into the power of choice, the different types of decision makers, and how our choices shape our lives. So, if someone is really struggling to make a difficult choice right now in any area of their life, what would your guidance be?
My simplest guidance would be to go inward, to have a conversation with themselves, which is essentially what a choice map is. It's an opportunity for you to have your own internal dialogue and to ask themselves a few questions. Number one, it's, why does this choice matter to you that you're considering? So that's key. You have to get to the bottom of that. And then once you know that, to then say to yourself, okay, what could hold me back from making this choice that I really want to make? Third question becomes, now, what is possible? What's exciting? What could I imagine comes for me, for others, etc., as this choice I want to make? And the fourth, and this goes back to the very beginning of our conversation, what action will I take so that I can create some momentum? And in theory, it is a pretty simple process. that is very easy to focus on these few questions to get the clarity for yourself. And it takes the traditional pro and con list a little bit deeper. The questions give you a bit more information, and as you come up with the answers, you have the choice how much do you want to pull apart the details of each answer to then continue going a little bit deeper and deeper for yourself.
I love this. And in your book, The Book of Choice, what are some of the key concepts that you guide them through? Just so they can know what to expect when they order a copy.
The key thing that I teach is the premise of the exploration map, which is rooted in these key questions. And so I'm guiding people through numerous examples of how might you look at a personal choice that you're navigating? How might you navigate a professional choice that you're up against? Maybe you're dealing with a relationship choice. Are you staying in a relationship, leaving one, looking to make one that you're in better? And using these questions as a way to understand yourself better. So I go into a lot of detail through a lot of explanation and examples of how you can see yourself in other people's examples. And it's very powerful. I teach people how to look back at choices they did make, how to look at choices they are making, and how even to get excited about the possibility of future choices that they want to make.
Ladies, are you listening? The answers you're looking for are waiting for you in the Book of Choice. Be sure to order a copy at kimdeyoung.com. And while you're there, take the quiz. What type of decision maker are you? So, something you said earlier, you used the word examined life. So, what does it mean to you to live an examined life, and why do you feel that's important?
So it's interesting. When I was writing my book, I had an experience where someone said to me, and this was a woman who was a beta reader of my book. She said, "Kim, I'm fascinated with your book, but I want to understand, why is it important for me to even think about the choices that I make? Like, why do I care?" And as I really reflected on her question, I thought about actually the opposite. I thought, what would happen if we don't care about our choices? Like if we're not paying attention to what we do and life is just happening to us. Like we know that that does not feel good. So the alternative is to now pay attention to your choices, to bring a level of intentionality and consciousness to the choices that you make so that you create what you want to have happen in your life. So I have used the term living an examined life in the past, but I think a nice alternative to that is living a life in which you're being intentional and thoughtful about your choices. And I had an experience right after my book was published. A dear friend, over 80, had reached out to me and she said, "Kim, is it too late?" And I said, "Is it too late for what?" And she said, "Is it too late for me to live an examined life?" She said, "I have never made my own decisions. I come from a generation where my husband made the decisions. I was not raised to do that. Could I start now?" I said, "You can start any day." So, regardless of your past, regardless of how you've made decisions, how you think about how you've made decisions, at any day, you could draw a line in the sand today and to say, you know what, today, I want to make my intentions really thoughtfully, consciously, intentionally. And that becomes who you are. And you just take the steps to begin doing that.
I love the intention behind everything you just shared. And for me, as you know, that's a big key word because I think when we live with intention and make decisions from intention, for myself, it feels like I'm coming from my highest truth and not the fears of my lower self. You know what I mean? I just feel it's for me, it's a more aligned, joyful way to live with intention and make my choices with intention.
I had a conversation with a young man a few years ago. I had been coaching him kind of through his college education, and as he came to the end of his graduation, he had the opportunity to go for kind of a big job or a startup. And he chose the startup, but he knew that in choosing the startup, the salary was much lower, but he was excited for what he would learn. Anyway, he moves forward with that job, and 18 months later, he came to me and he said, Kim, I feel like I'm a loser. And I said, why? And he said, because I'm not making the money that my friends are making. I said, first of all, let's take a step back. You're not making the money that your friends are making because you made the choice to go to the startup. Like you knew what you were doing. You were very thoughtful, conscious, et cetera. And you knew that money would be tighter. Your friends went for service industry jobs, like their salaries are higher. That's a truth. You could make a new choice today to say, you know what, I'm walking away from the startup because I want to make more money and therefore I'm going to go service industry. Or you could say, I really love what I'm doing. Maybe I'm going to get a side hustle to bring some extra money in because I really love this startup. Like there are many other choices you can make, but be careful to not speak about yourself negatively for a choice you made because you were thoughtful about it. And again, you could course correct. You could look at it now 18 months later and say, I want to shift gears. That's perfectly fine. So it just becomes bringing thoughtfulness kind of to where you are in the moment and looking at it honestly and not berating yourself for the choice you did make because likely whatever choice you made, you did it as thoughtfully as you could in the moment. And you now have an opportunity in today's moment to bring whatever you've learned along the way to making the most thoughtful choice you can today. And then you will learn from it in tomorrow's choice.
Love that story because I think we can all recognize ourselves in that pattern of we make the choice and we find out that the life or career or relationship isn't what we wanted. Then what happens? I know I've done this. I judge myself for making the wrong choice. But the reality is, and I've come to learn, I made the best choice I could in that moment, and now I'll make a new one.
Mhm.
But we fall into the self-judgment. Don't you notice that? Like, oh, I made the wrong one. You didn't make the wrong one.
You know, one of my favorite chapters in the book is actually called No Wrong Choices. And essentially, the message of that chapter is that we don't make wrong choices, we make choices that provide us with lessons. And if we're open to learning the lesson from the choice we made that, maybe we've not deemed as the most perfect choice, then it becomes valuable for who we are now. So that really is such a key thing. I mean, there's no doubt we all sit with shame and regret for things that we may have done in the past. But the real question in today's time, how can you learn from it? What do you want to do differently than you did so you don't bring that forth into the future? Like every choice is an opportunity for learning and for growth.
It is. I mean, I wouldn't be doing the work I do now or in the relationship I have now if I didn't keep, I don't know, I call it sometimes conscious pivoting, like, whoa, how'd I get here? I know I made the choices to get there. It's like, what are the new choices so I can kind of like course correct?
Yeah.
And and I've always given the one thing I think I can say has been one of my superpowers is I always give myself permission to be okay with falling and failing. Where in my first 30 years, I would stay frozen because I had a deep sense of failure, not because of others' perspectives. I just didn't want to fail. And it wasn't just in business, it was in, I didn't want to make the wrong decision. So, of course, I made none, which means my life was stuck. So now I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of, I think of it as an adventure. Okay, I'm going to try this because that's what my intuition's telling me. And I go all in with full trust. And I'd say 90% of the time it works out. And the other 10% is like what you just said. Oh, well, these were wonderful lessons to learn. So, and then I course correct. And to me, it's an adventure. What's down this path? What's down that trail? And I think if, for myself anyway, when I hold that mindset, that it's a beautiful adventure, let me see where this choice will take me. I think it's empowering.
And I couldn't agree more. And I think to be at that place to feel that confidence takes wisdom, experience. So I speak with a lot of young adults, um, and they're nervous. They don't have the life experience to necessarily trust themselves. Their parents have been involved in, many of their choices. So here they are post college, for example, making their first personal and professional relationship choices, and they're nervous.
Yeah,
They haven't necessarily developed their intuition. They don't have the arsenal of experiences to draw upon to know with confidence, like, okay, even if that's not the perfect choice, like I'll be okay. Like to feel the solid foundation of who they are. That comes with age.
it does.
So, um,
Definitely. It
yeah.
most definitely. And I can remember my daughter's 41 now. I can't even believe I'm saying that out loud. Um, but and she is different from me. But one of the things I feel I really did well as a mom was because of my fear and anxiety and um, my not being confident in making decisions. I didn't want her to have that. So even at a young age, I would invite her to make choices, simple choices. What do you want to wear to school? So that she could learn to trust herself. What do you want to eat? Like instead of me projecting as a parent, wear this, do this. So at a young age, I started that. And now I witness her doing that. My granddaughter's 13 and is the most empowered child. And I'm like, yes, because she got the opportunity to make choices so she could build her trust. And I think for a lot of us, myself included, we weren't raised with that. We were raised with do this, do that, et cetera, et cetera. So we have one more minute before we have to close. I want to hear your insights on that.
Well, I have a big vision. I have the URL called thechoiceschool.com, which I have yet to fully expand, but it speaks to that vision of we have not been taught how to make choices as we've grown up. And, so a vision I dream of, and I welcome the collaborative support of many, is how do we bring the education of choice into all levels of education? I mean, think how powerful that would be. Like, you're fortunate that your 13-year-old is an empowered choice maker because she was getting it passed down from you to her, your daughter to her. Many are not. And to now to be given those skills at an early age, so that they have the confidence and they can make the choices. I mean, it's an incredible skill, and one that we as the older generation can do our best to be supportive of those in the younger generation as they're making their choices.
Beautifully said. And I'll hold that vision with you, my
Thank
friend,
you.
for that to come to life. And I want to thank you, Kim, for joining me today. I love this conversation. So thank you, my friend.
Well, thank you for having me. I have followed you for so long, and I love the work that you're doing in the world. And I'm honored that you invited me to be here and to just have this conversation from the heart and just to go there.
Mm, Thank you. I was so glad when you said yes. So until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.